Hi there guys, I'm going to cut straight to the isolated examples here because I've got loads of them in this video. So the first one is how I would actually use the pedal, and it's also how I think a lot of people are going to use it, which is to use it as a pedal platform, and you run your favorite overdrive pedal, which in my case is my small fry burn unit, into the front end of it. And then in this case I've run it into an external IR, which is by a company called Redwirez. They are free, you can download them. I will leave a link in the description. There's 4 different mic models and various different bit rates, so you've got nothing to lose by checking them out. I highly recommend it. Anyway, on the gig I also ran my DD3 delay, and that's actually really similar to how I run my real amp. I've got a Marshall SV20, which I will compare to this in just a second. Now the way I run my amp is to run just the normal channel, and that's what this example is. And that's what I really like about this pedal, is that by comparison to other 4-input Marshall models, they actually give you both channels, where a lot of them just assume that you're gonna jump the channels together. But I find that running the normal channel by itself with none of the high channel is actually a really good pedal platform, and you can do that with this pedal. Now, because this is a bit of a Hendrix situation, it's got his name on the front of the unit, I think a lot of people are going to want to know what a fuzz sounds like into it. And the only one I've got is this Gear for Music fuzz, which used to be yellow with a picture of a train on it, which is why I've sprayed it black. But even though it's cheap and cheerful, around about 20 quid, it actually sounds pretty righteous. Now I've got a Marshall SV20 just over my right shoulder here, and I'm going to compare it to this pedal. Now some people are going to say, hold on a second, this is not a Plexi. Well, kind of and kind of not. Jim's 45 doesn't mean Jim Marshall 45, as I thought it did originally, which would of course mean JTM45. It actually means Jimi Hendrix 45. Now Jimmy never played a JTM45, he played a 45-100. You can think of that amp as being the interim between the two. So it was a 100 watt amp, which is obviously more similar to a Plexi. Apparently it was a solid state rectifier, and it had a modified tone stack, and those modifications later went on to be incorporated into the Marshall lineup and became the Plexi. So I think this is a fair game comparison. Now as a control group, I'm going to run both this and the Marshall into that same external IR, and I'm going to do 2 different things. Number 1, I'm going to put a pedal into it again. And the reason being, you want to know how this handles a pedal in comparison to a real amp. And then I'm going to use the internal gain from both. And the results from this were kind of surprising. You'll have to check out the settings on screen. When I run this into this, it actually came up pretty similar to the real amp. But when I use the internal gain, this came up quite a bit mid-light, and I've tried to compensate by turning the mid control up. But it's not quite as rich in my opinion. But I was really surprised at how close it got when you used a pedal in front of it. Somebody somewhere is going to want to know what this sounds like clean, and so here's that. Now this pedal features a boost, and the boost can be used in two different ways. One, it could be in front of the gain stage, or two, it could be post. When it's post, it's a completely flat, just volume boost, and I'm not going to demonstrate that because I have to normalize the channel anyway, so it would basically be the same example twice. When it's in front of the gain stage, it actually works more like a tube screamer according to the literature. So it's going to lop off a little high end, it's going to lop off a little low end, and by virtue of the fact that it's a little bit louder, it's going to give you a tiny bit more gain. Now I don't have a tube screamer here, but I do have a Rockett Archer, and I found a setting on this that was pretty similar to the internal boost. So I thought I'd play the two next to each other so that you've got some kind of a known entity to compare it to. For this next example, I'm going to show you what the two impulse responses sound like next to each other. So the external one that I've been using for some of these isolated clips, and the one that this ships with. Now I'll say that I'm not a fan of the one that this ships with. I find it to be a little fizzy and bright, but here's a comparison between the two using the internal gain from the JTM45. And then I'm also going to give you a blast of the SV20 into the external IR, and this is going to show you basically what you could expect to get from this by comparison to a real amp loaded down and put into an impulse response if you use this in its stock form. I've got one more example for you right here. This is going to use the JTM45 as a preamp for another amplifier. So just over my right shoulder again, you've got a DV-Mark GH250. Now if I run the clean channel of that, it is super clean and not particularly accepting of an overdrive pedal. So in the first example, I'm going to use this as basically a secondary channel to the amplifier, and I'm going to use the internal gain for a rhythm sound. And then I'm going to use it as a pedal platform for this. The reason I keep using this, by the way, is this is my only proper overdrive pedal. It's also my favorite one, but it is the only one that I've got. So this actually worked really well. I was surprised at how good this sounded. So it's a really great unit, and having taken it out on a gig, I could totally use it on a gig. However, as far as I can work out, and do correct me if I'm wrong in the comments section, I've looked in the manual, I've tried plugging it in via USB, I even asked a question on Facebook on the TC page. There doesn't seem to be a way to change the internal impulse response of this unit, and having to run an external one is just impractical for my particular setup. I do have this. You probably saw it in one of the isolated clips, the Sonic IR. But I've only got the one of them, and I like to use that with the amp, so I don't want to have to keep taking it on and off a pedal board. If I could change the one in here, I would totally buy this, because the thing that I'm using for modeling purposes at the moment for going direct to rig is actually malfunctioning, and I'm looking to change, but without having the ability to change the internal impulse response, I just simply won't use this. It's too impractical to have to run a secondary unit. Like I said, I have to keep rewiring my pedal board every week, whether I want it to go direct to PA or whether I want to use my real amp. It's such a shame, because it's a really great sound using that external IR. Hopefully, TC might be able to update this in the future, and if they do, I will post in the comments below, and I will pin the comment so that you know that it's been done. A friend of mine uses the plethora pedal and said that it didn't always have IR support when it first shipped, but they have since managed to update that using some kind of a firmware thing. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility that they can change that, but as of right now, I don't think you can. It's a real shame, because otherwise I really like this product. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you dug the video. See you next time. Later.